coming up on WordBirds.
I tried to trick my team various times lately by writing stuff with ChatGPT. So I got to a stage that I pitch really good skeletons with actual research, and then they go to the research, they validate it, and I already get good feedback. Wow, that's a really good skeleton. It's really backed up by data, and we have statistics. And I use the prompts better and better. Like, hey, ChatGPT, give me this, and each point needs to be backed up by industry-leading research company, quote from there, blah blah blah, blah, and I get that. When I try to do the full article, they catch me. They already identify that it looks ChatGPT-ish.
Hello and welcome to WordBirds, the birds of a feather conversation amongst people who care about words. Season 4, Friends of the Bird. Today on the show, we have Gidi Pridor. Gidi is the CMO at Workvivo, now a company owned by Zoom. Prior to that, he was the CMO at Travel Perks. And prior to that, he and I worked together at Perfecto Mobile. Today, this born storyteller and I are going to talk about the unintended consequences of provocative content. We're going to talk about why measuring content marketing might keep us from getting the best out of content marketing and how the best campaigns connect on an emotional level. Let's sit back and get some insight from the plot. Hello, Gideon. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Chris. I'm happy to be here. It's been ages, right?
It has been ages. I think people should probably understand where we know each other from. I took a job at a company.
We used to be married.
I wasn't going to go that deep, but yes, I mean that was a scenario that we were in. We worked together at Perfecto back when it was Perfecto Mobile, before the big rebrand into Perfecto and the acquisition by Perforce. Gidi and I spent a lovely and fascinating 2 years together. You were the CMO at Workvivo. You are now a C-level marketing person at a company owned by Zoom. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. After my last company is called Travel Perk, it became a big unicorn in the business travel software.
We're actually turning it on here. We're going to be using Travel Perk starting next
cool.
month.
So I was there from like really, really early on, and I built led marketing there. I always do the same. I mean, in companies that are sort of like disrupting a category, building a category, because I love storytelling. I always say that every marketer has a lot of stuff that he knows about, and usually one thing that he's really good at, it takes age in order to understand what's your thing. And my thing is storytelling, which is why I like category disruption. And we did that, and it was it became big and all that. And then I started consulting mainly for equity for various early stage startups, which is usually where I enter. And I met John, the CEO and founder of Workvivo. I loved what they're doing. I got connected to the mission a lot. It's basically an internal communications and engagement platform and a go-to employee app where everything happens, from CEO communicating to staff to me telling you, hey, shout out, kudos, and people chiming in. So it's digitizing a lot of the culture and engagement aspects in an organization. It boomed since COVID for obvious reasons, right?
Sure.
And I got lured in. I started to do this full time, built a team, and telling stories. The marketing strategy was and is very, very story driven. We do a lot of content of different types, and then that happened a few months back. We got acquired by Zoom in order to complement their growing portfolio of unified collaboration as a service, UCaaS. We bring in a whole new aspect, which is less about productivity and collaboration and much more about the employee experience, the relational, emotional connection of employees to the company. And together, we're building something that is a true digital workplace platform where all communication happens, synchronous, asynchronous, productivity, engagement, and so forth. So it's the beginning of a new journey. It's been really exciting and really intense.
Are there offices in Israel, or are you just moving home?
No, there are people that are like working from Israel, I know, but there aren't like offices. So I'm moving home, and also for like a year. That's something we already always had planned out since you and I worked together in Boston.
Mhm.
So we're going to do that, and then probably go back to Europe.
Fantastic. Gidi's wife is from Spain, which is how this all evolves. When I
Gideon's,
met him,
Gideon's lovely wife. You didn't say lovely wife.
lovely wife Paula, who I adore. I met Gidi here in Boston, and they were living here. Then they moved to Barcelona, which is lovely, and now back to Tel Aviv, which is also nice. I spent a lot of time with Gideon in Tel Aviv. It's how I learned Israel. It was fantastic. But hey, let's talk some content. So, sort of a quick fire round. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, short answers. Then we're going to dig in. First, what's your best and most successful content campaign?
I'd say I think we did in Workvivo that we called HR burnout. You want me to explain?
Not yet.
Okay.
What was your worst content campaign?
Ditch your travel agent.
I wanted to get into that. Out of the 2 of those, which one taught you the most about moving forward?
I think that the worst one.
Let's dig in. So I'm guessing I can guess what the problem was with Ditch Your Travel Agent, but go ahead. What was that campaign?
So we're early stage in travel perk. It's $1 trillion business travel market. It's huge, and we were very small. Today, it's a huge company. Like us and our competitor back then are both like valuated in the billions, and it became really big. Back then, we were like tiny, and we're trying to fight all these huge travel management companies. American Express, Global Business Travel, and all that. And we did content. We tried to be provocative, and one of my main narratives was, why would you use a travel agent when you have like a thing that you could do it yourself and you get the support, and like it's techy and it's fast, and it's so nobody used to visit the blog, and nobody responded in social. So I asked for more provocative stuff, and I wish I could have blamed somebody else, but I wrote the narrative myself. I sat down and said, I'll do it. Fine, move aside. I'll do it. Move aside. And I wrote like a few narratives, like skeletons. And one of them was like, all of them were around that like idea of theme of ditching your travel agent. Like basically it made you feel that travel agents are like obsolete. It's like, oh, that's dinosaurs. That's not good. Uh, and the good news was that for a company our size, it blew up. It really blew up, like LinkedIn, conversations, opinions, stuff. The bad news is that in the beginning, I was like proud, and I was saying, hey, every publicity is good publicity, which is like obviously not true. It's things that bad politicians say, right?
Right.
But like it's it became, after the first hype of yeah, here, very good, right, we hate traveling with a travel agent, then travel agents started to respond, and it's like millions of people that I just attacked their job and their reason to exist, basically, and called them bad things, or at least that's how it's perceived, right? And then a lot of negative energy started to accumulate around these things, and I couldn't even erase it anymore because it was a thing. It was a lot of content and blog posts and stuff that people reposted and so forth. And what I learned from it is that the positive, like thumbs up and all that, your fan base, that disappears in like a day. The other thing, the real impact of how people absorb good content, if it's being circulated for good or for worse, that stays for longer. And you need to be responsible with it. It also taught me that you should always lean towards positive more than negative. Negative is always easier. It's easy to insult someone. It's harder to explain why you're good. Or if you're not talking about yourself, it's easy. It's harder to explain why your approach for the market to the market and how it's supposed to change is the right one. It's much easier to say that sucks. And we never did that again. We talked about improving business travel as it is. We highlighted stuff that are not working as it used to be, but it was a guideline for my content marketing for the years to follow. Not to be, it's okay to be provocative, but never cross the line, never be offensive.
Yep.
Nobody wants to get enemies, and these things stick in the internet forever. So I learned a lot from that.
So you don't have a lot of friends that are travel agents right now?
No. Not a lot. No, not
No,
a lot.
not so many. I mean, I think that's interesting because you think about like what you were doing was fun. I mean, it sounds like a fun message. It's an attention-getting message, and it got attention. It just didn't necessarily get all the attention that you thought it was going to, and we're seeing that now in the world of AI. AI can come and change the way that you build content, and people are hearing that content creators are hearing that and saying, "Oh, cool. So when are you sending me home as a result of this new product advancement?" And that's, I mean, where do you come in on that? I mean, how does this change? How does AI, same deal? How do you change the way that you work without changing all of the people and all of the process and everything that you do?
It's a good
Or
question.
do you? I mean, you could also be very evil. I mean,
No,
I don't
so
know
it's a
if
really
you are.
good question, and I don't mean it in the American way that you just say something is a good question like a lot of times in a conversation. I
It's
mean it in
very
the Israeli
interesting.
way.
Yes.
I mean in the Israeli way, like it's really a good question. But the I don't know the answer to that question really. I could tell you like what of how I've been looking at it like so far. It does definitely create anxiety because you ask this thing, you know, stuff, and it brings out stuff in a minute that you're like, okay, that doesn't seem so far than what my content writer would have done. Now, when you do a bunch of them, then you see that there is, of course, like gaps, and it's already becoming easier to identify what was written completely by AI or like not. I think that like it is changing and it will change everything. What people don't agree on is exactly how. I disagree with the statement that it will, let's say, replace content marketing. I never thought that good content marketing was about volume because even before AI, you could outsource it somewhere and write thousands of articles for SEO. And then SEO becomes smarter and these become obsolete. And they find another way to try to trick the system till they find out that it's maybe a better investment of your money and attention to actually write good content that says stuff. I think that there's a huge opportunity in AI that would enable people to produce more content and save time on stuff like research, for example. I like to write skeletons, so my content team could write stuff after I gave like a base idea, if there's 5 reasons for why democratized open communications is the way to go. I want to think of the five suggested in 5 bullets, and they could help me write it, for example.
Mhm.
And I like to back that with research, but research would take a long time, reading like 100-page Deloitte like research. If you know how to use the right prompts, it could really, really, really make that easier and give you help you come up with a skeleton that actually has references and statistics, and researchers find the bottom lines in there, validate that the sources are real, but it lets you do very comprehensive work quicker if you know how to use it. I think that the actual brains will remain human, at least for the time being, until artificial intelligence becomes non-artificial intelligence, you know,
Right. Yep.
and that would happen as well at some point. But for now, I think it could help. It could help with research. It could help with like developing more skeletons, with fine tuning titles to be more provocative or less provocative, and a bunch of stuff like that. But it's mainly an empowerment tool that I think would let you run a much better content team with less people, but still people that write, that bring the tone of voice, and people that architect and bring the actual ideas and knowledge to life. So it's an amazing enhancer if you know how to use it. I feel I'm just getting started with understanding how to use it, but I'm pretty convinced that it doesn't replace a content marketing team.
No, I mean, for us, it seems to replace things that we don't have, right? So you've met Charlotte, our producer for the show. She's also one of our content creators, and she creates this amazing content that then we get, the BDR team saying, okay, well, we need an email cadence on this, or we need to turn this into landing pages. All of this additional use from this key asset. That's a great use case for generative AI because we don't have somebody responsible for creating email cadences. Where does that fall? Is it a digital role? Is it a content marketing role? It's somewhere in the middle. But the ability to take something and say, okay, here's the thing, turn it into what everybody needs. That's super valuable. And it
Yeah.
doesn't replace anybody. It fills a gap that I know I have, and it makes the team better and more efficient and delivers more value from a single piece of content. So our workload from a content marketing standpoint isn't changing. The product of what comes out of our work is changing.
But when you think
Yep.
about yourself scaling, then it would potentially change how many people you would have hired over time because you could have hired people that all they do is take the thing and
Yep.
repurpose that into different things. So I think there will be smaller, sharper, more powerful content teams that leverage this thing. The main thing, I forgot how you like to say think, by the way. You love to say think. So it's a thing, right? You say it all the
It is
time.
it
So
is a thing. Yes.
but I think that I always say, I think my prediction is that like AI is going to uh, with AI there'll be there'll be more work for smart people or imaginative people that know how to imagine stuff. There might be less work in some roles that are mainly about repurposing or like harvesting something, right? But creating the thing is still the most important thing, like the concept, the message that you want to talk about, and then like taking that and like reducing a lot of the work of repurposing that into different channels and types of content and all that. It lets you be a much leaner, meaner content team that could produce a lot more, but you still need to be able to produce the core message, the
Yeah.
core knowledge, the core intelligence, and then use the tool in order to repurpose and replicate that.
Absolutely. I mean, if we go into ChatGPT and say, write me a 45-page ebook on content governance, oh, it's going to go look at our website and create something that we already wrote. Is not going to create new. So we need to create the new and then leverage that new for the derivatives. And that becomes super interesting. There's all kinds of additional things that you could be doing in the workflow, but that one thing, just that's the promise of automation. It's taking the best of what creative minds can do and taking the manual work out of it. That's super
Yeah.
interesting.
I tried to trick my team various times lately by writing stuff with ChatGPT. So I got to a stage that I pitch really good skeletons with actual research, like, and then they go to the research, they validate it, and and then I already get good feedback. Wow, that's a really good skeleton. It's really backed up by data, and we have statistics. And I use the prompts better and better. Like, hey, ChatGPT, give me this, and each point needs to be backed up by like industry leading research company. Quote from there, blah blah blah, blah, and I get that. When I try to do the full article, they catch me. They already identify that it looks ChatGPT ish. You know?
Yep. No, it starts to look familiar. It's all of a sudden you find a question that it asked and you didn't answer. I'm like, oh, damn it. All right. Clearly I didn't write this part. Yeah, that's a hoot. One of the things that I've been talking about lately with folks, I had this conversation several days ago, was Factors magazine. Remember Factors? Randall
No.
and Carlo put it together. It was the guide to all of the devices, digital cellular devices in market at any given point that we handed to the sales team at Perfecto to go sell more product. You remember that beautiful magazine? It was
No.
probably in your last year.
No.
Oh, that's so disappointing because that was to me that's my example of an amazing content campaign because it wasn't just demand gen. Like it was, we got a lot of leads out of the webinars that came out of the announcement of each new issue, but it was handing something to a salesperson that dramatically shifted the value of their deal. You walk into a major bank and they say, well, we'd like to test on 10 devices. Cool. Flip, flip, flip through the book. That's given me 30% test coverage vibes. Is that about where you intended to be? No, we're an incredibly important global bank. Okay, well, where do you want to be? 100% test coverage? No, that's not a thing. How about 80% test coverage? Flip, 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 flip. That's 100 devices in this country, another 50 in this country, and we need to split across multiple continents. We've just changed this deal from $150,000 a year to 1.7 million first year deal value. Like that's a hugely successful piece of content marketing. And it goes beyond the expectations of content marketing because it reaches into the middle and end of the funnel, closes deals and makes those deals bigger while it's closing. Like if we could do more of that, like those are the good old days. We need to find more things like that.
No, it's not you could still find things like that. The gap you mentioned, like people that I know. So if you manage to involve product marketing, for example, or people that are in the in the front line selling in the sales organization, then you get this sort of input in order to even understand what's the gap. Content marketing could help with a lot more than what people traditionally like think, but in order to do that in the marketing team, you need to you need to have people that know how to produce content marketing and understand the business and the gaps and why stuff are not moving down the funnel
Mhm.
in a good enough way. When we did that, like I don't remember that like magazine, but I remember before that I was involved in doing the optimizer, like a thing that like used to always have like the top 30 devices in the
Yep.
market, and it used to change and show you your coverage. Uh, then all these things came out of a need, like an understanding that like people want coverage and they don't know exactly what it means. They go to the store and buy it. So it's more than just thought leadership. It's something that actually like pushes you to action. That's amazing impact.
Yeah, it was it felt so easy to overlay that on top of that business. Not every business has that kind of a play. Tell me a little bit about HR burnout. What's that campaign about?
We in Workvivo, the sale it's a very emotionally driven sale. Like the CEO is involved a lot of times. You talk about pains like disconnection and disengagement, especially since like people started to work remotely, people in the front line that like aren't involved in the company culture and all that. So um, we wanted to produce content around that resonates and like creates sort of like a movement or highlights a problem that creates empathy, that people that our personas, which are comms people or HR people, like respond to. We tried a few things and none of them was interesting enough, like because we did surveys and stuff and it was like, okay, so and takeaway, like the key takeaway, communications is important, authenticity is important, it like enters here, it goes out here, right? We did this, our head of comms came up with it actually, and not like it came, the idea came from outside of like content marketing. A lot of it was written by content marketing. So we did a big survey, with HR leaders, and asked not about their role. We asked about them as people, their job, what happened since COVID, how hard it became. Stuff that we realized after a lot of thought that a lot of like all these surveys are missing. They're talking about the employee, they're talking about the company, the culture, the engagement. We focused on that, on the person, on you as an HR leader. The results were amazing. One of the like questions showed that, and we had like four or 5,000 people that we asked, and we collaborated with communities as well to give it credibility. And 98% of the HR leaders that we surveyed said that they feel completely burned out, and a slightly lower number that they're considering to leave their job. They're done basically. That's after a year and a half of like hell, really, of being there trying to like manage all of these craziness and changes in the workplace. So we went out with that and with these really really powerful statistic, and it really became a hashtag like HR burnout. It was quoted. It's still being quoted until today. That's like 2 years after. I think that we got like at least 1,000 earned mentions from Forbes and Wall Street Journal to like other places around this thing. We wrote dozens of like content pieces that related back to that thing. It sort of became like I wouldn't say a movement, but like sort of like a mega campaign that we developed campaigns from, and that got us a lot of lead, a lot of brand recognition, and is still alive after 2 years. So we're planning the second one and all that, and it all came from that idea to actually focus on the person and like not on the function of the person or the company.
I mean, it's even
and
beyond value messaging. It's aiming right at their emotional state. They're being
and
heard and understood.
in a time where they try to make sure that everybody is being heard, because people have fatigue from all of the like being remote and this and that, and they're not engaged and they don't feel a CEO, all these problems. But nobody was talking about the people that their job became 10 times harder. Everybody complains, people have anxiety, people like HR people were pushed to the limit. I talked to dozens and dozens of them, right? And that thing brought like that obvious thing to life, but nobody was asking. And suddenly we got a lot of like a lot of interest from these people that felt understood and that this represents something that they feel. CEOs felt that this is a risk that they're having inside their team. Are their HR people going to leave? What's going to happen? They've never been more important than now, right? And it was sort of like a bullseye, and it came out of like thinking very differently and thinking from the calm side. I remember what potentially could unveil something that is like not more of the same. So we were thinking angles and angles and angles, and then we're like, okay, let's ask about them. And the results were also like, spot on. So it's like we still get every week. I see it on Slack. Media mentions we still on a weekly basis get like articles in different places referencing this thing, calls for collaboration on content, like rights to use it, stuff like that. 2 years.
It makes a case for really knowing your persona, because if you know who you're going after, then you can understand their psyche and you can understand how to speak to them in the emotion, the tone, the voice, and the words that they need to hear, versus just throwing value at them. Hey, we got this thing. You should look at it, which is what so much of marketing is look at the thing, look at the thing, look at the thing. You're saying, no, I hear you. I understand what you're going through. Let's talk about how we can make your life easier. I feel like people would be attracted to that.
Yeah, completely. I also think that there is an angle of like that has to do not only with content marketing but with marketing, with and that has to do with like humanizing stuff. I always say that there are two ways in order. I did this talk in SaaS Talk in Dublin about like story-led marketing this year, or no, end of last year,
End of last year, I
and
watched that.
you did. Yeah.
I did.
So I had like two. I said that there are two ways in order to really like get through, and one of them is humor, and one of them is empathy, right? And when you create anything, it could be communication, social content, articles that you're writing, or just your general messaging, thinking about the person, not only the business side and the company, is always a good place to go, because we are like we are people and we are selling to people, and the human factor really gets like disregarded too commonly. Like you sell something, you're not fixing the fact that they're completely burned out, but it is a part of the problem, because they're so burned out because everybody has suddenly problems because they're working remote in 2021, and you don't have an office and they're not used to it and they're not equipped to it. We have a software that helps people feel recognized. It gives you a shout out, it connects stuff to company values and goals. You hear the CEO all day long. There is a culture thing that happens digitally, so without pushing it too hard, it's connected to that problem that persona has on an emotional level, and you don't have to push it. You just have to empathetically show that you understand that that they're going through a lot right now. And yeah,
That's fantastic. I've taken so many notes on that. I want to. I wonder if I can do that here. So the last part of this, I won't keep you all day, but the last part is the PSOTD. I feel like I learned this working with you. The PSOTD is the provocative statement of the day. It's a closely held opinion of yours that other people might not agree with, but that you feel pretty strongly about.
I don't think you learned that from me. Nobody ever taught you how to be provocative. You were born this way.
Fair enough. So, what would your provocative statement of the day be right now, at this point in your life? What's your provocative statement?
Well, I feel that you might really disagree with this one, but
Cool.
I feel that content marketing can't really be 100% measured. Parts of it could, and I also feel that most SaaS companies out there, they're not that good at this side of marketing. They're good at data, and most of them aren't sort of like brave, bold enough in order to invest, truly invest in content marketing and a content marketing brand. And I realizing that there's a lot of good that would bring that they can't measure. Uh, but the ones that do, and do it from a very early stage, would see great benefits in terms of inbound. and in terms of general brand recognition and stuff that you only start usually to think about when you're a much later stage scale up. So I think it's two in one. I think that when it comes to content marketing, I really think that most SaaS growth stage startups aren't doing a good job, and are only looking at stuff that they could feel that they measure, like SEO stuff, right?
Yep. No,
And I
absolutely.
feel that, like, in general, great content marketing to be measured only to could be measured only to an extent, and we should also respect our feedback, the feedback that we're getting, and our own instinct about what kind of impact this thing does, especially if you want to change an existing market, change a paradigm, do stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I
No,
think.
I buy that completely because I think, I mean, if you look at it at surface value, like I know what a lead costs. I know what a meeting costs. I know what the progression is. I know all my conversion rates. What I also know the leads that I get from an individual piece of content, but there's all kinds of programs running around that. So then the content has a cost, but it doesn't really have a measurement. But I think what you're saying is that good content is a overall lubricant to the process. So that content that becomes recognized, that becomes valuable to your audience, is going to make it easier to get leads. It's going to be easier for deals to progress. It's going to have impact in the middle of the funnel from a thought leadership standpoint. It's going to engage a champion that's going to allow them to drive up to an economic buyer. Everything is going to get easier if you're spending the money back in the back end to tell the right stories to engage the right audience. Is that essentially your message?
Yeah, my message is that you should, like, on the positive side, I think that great marketing leaders today from a very early stage should be bold enough to invest not only in what they could measure perfectly, but also in what they could measure only partially. And then accept that, and not try to measure fake leading metrics to stuff. It's very important to excite the market, to excite your audience, your customers, your prospects. And in order to do that and produce stuff that are not just good for SEO, but are also genuinely interesting and reflecting your belief system and how you're changing the market, where the market should go, or specifically the personas that you're talking to, then you need to be bold enough in order to put good stuff out there, even if you can't measure the impact completely. Because if you measure it just by direct leads, it would look like an inefficient channel. But then again, you'll do it for 2 years, and then one day you'll shut this whole thing down, and you'll see the decrease in inbound and everything. So I think we all know and feel that it works like this, but sometimes, or even most of us, don't have the guts to invest in a channel that just seems to spend money and doesn't look ROI positive. But I think that it's more important than ever before, especially if you're in the business of disrupting something.
Yep. No, absolutely. I mean, I know that when budget changes and budget allocation occur, the area that I very rarely impact is the content creation. It's easier to do things creatively with demand budget than it is with content budget. Content drives everything else. If you don't have it, nothing's going to work, I think.
Yep.
Anywho, it's been 8 years since I walked into Cummings Place in Woburn and met Gidi Pridor. You have gone through a lot of different experiences since then. I'm very impressed with where you've come to today. Congratulations on the most recent acquisition, and thank you for being on the show today. This is fantastic.
Thank you, Chris. It was fun to catch up.
Thanks for listening to WordBirds. WordBirds is hosted by Chris Willis, produced by Charlotte Baxter Reed, and brought to you by Acrolinks. For more information on Acrolinks, visit www.acrolinks.com.